Welcome back to another episode of See You in the Funny Papers. My name is Jem, and it's been a while since our last episode. I know, I'm guilty. So, today I wanted to make a video to show you this gorgeous new, resized edition of a previously released book by Taschen, the complete colour Sundays of Krazy Kat from 1935 to 1944. This was a previously released edition about 5 years ago, and it was a XXL size previously, and this is now a XL sized edition and at a much affordable price. But I'll go into the details shortly. Here is the video demonstrating the new book. Before Walt Kelly's Pogo, before Floyd Gottfredson's Mickey Mouse, and even before Jim Davis's Garfield, there was George Herriman's Krazy Kat. The comic strip Krazy Kat was created by American cartoonist George Herriman. The strip ran from its formal debut in 1913 until its eventual end in 1944. It came about in 1911 that Krazy Kat, the character, was introduced in one of the daily strips of Herriman's other strip called The Dingbat Family. It wasn't until 1913 that Krazy Kat got his own strip, which eventually began as a vertical format featuring 5 panels and was published daily in black and white. This changed in later years to become a horizontal and even panoramic format. But it's 1916 that the publisher began to print a Sunday strip in black and white to accompany the dailies which were already coming out in black and white. These dailies and Sundays would both keep being printed until the strip's eventual end. The Krazy Kat strip features on 3 anthropomorphic characters living in a fictional setting called Coconino County. The 3 characters themselves include titular Krazy Kat, followed by Ignatz Mouse, who you see is often the small character throwing a brick at Krazy, meant as some form of affection or love. It's also the main gag you'll see throughout all the strip of Krazy Kat, where the brick is often being hurled at Krazy's head, either in anticipation of or the direct after effect of it. And the third and final character is Officer Pup, who represents the law and order in Coconino County. As the strip developed over the years, Herriman decided to intertwine these 3 characters in a love triangle. And what you'll also notice as well is that the Krazy Kat character is androgynous, often referring to themselves as either he sometimes or she sometimes. The other thing that makes Krazy Kat quite an interesting comic strip is that the creator, George Herriman, was secretly a mixed-race Creole man. To his peers, his colleagues, his publisher, William Randolph Hearst, who was the owner of the paper and the owner of King Feature Syndicate, George Herriman presented himself as a Caucasian man. Herriman himself even encouraged a rumour that he was of a Greek background to explain the colour and shape of his hair, which he hid under his bowler hat. And it's because of this time in America there was the Jim Crow laws, which restricted the daily livelihoods of many people of colour and ethnic backgrounds. So for Herriman to hide or misrepresent his true ethnic background was at the risk of his personal life being found out. The Krazy strip is beautiful in its dialect-heavy dialogue. It definitely takes a little bit of reading to get used to their dialect, but it is amazing when you do manage to find the rhythm to it, and it's coupled with these gorgeous colours, which was limited for that time, but it's an amazing result that they've achieved, as well as there's these beautiful panels that were experimental at the time, which you can see Herriman's probably inspired by what the work his contemporaries are doing in other associated newspapers. So overall, it's just a beautiful product. It wasn't until 1935 that King Feature Syndicate decided to produce the Sundays strip into a colour format instead of its original black and white. These colour strips ran from 1935 until Herriman's eventual passing in 1944, which came about when Herriman passed away in his sleep after suffering from a long illness. Herriman was 63 at the time of his passing. But if you enjoyed this book, if you enjoyed this review, or if you've enjoyed any of George Herriman's other books that have been published, I really would recommend checking out author Michael Tisserand's biography on George Herriman, which is titled Krazy, for the full life of Herriman, because Herriman had a really interesting background from everything from like his initial upbringing in New Orleans to his travels across America, either during his childhood or eventual life as a cartoonist, but also just the strips that Herriman created, because Krazy Kat wasn't the only thing that Herriman created. There was a number of strips that were quite popular at the time, including things like even George Herriman initially started off as a sports cartoonist. So the whole story is quite fascinating, and Michael Tisserand's done an outstanding job on it, so definitely check out the book Krazy. Now, one of my favourite part about these videos is getting to demonstrate the size compared to some of the other books available. So the first one I've got here is a Fantagraphics Sundays, produced in the 2000s, and it's a paperback edition, which Fantagraphics produced several volumes in this series. So against the book, you can see there's quite a big size difference. While we're on the topic, I should also mention the book itself is approximately just over 27 centimeters in width and about 37 centimeters in height. And for anyone who may be using imperial measurement, that's approximately just over 14 inches in height and 11 inches in width. The next book we have here for comparison is a Krazy book released through Abrams ComicArts, which is Krazy Kat: A Celebration. Next up we have the autobiography that was mentioned before, Krazy, written by author Michael Tisserand. This is my hardcover copy. You can see it's quite a thick read. I would highly recommend it. It was a really well-researched book by Tisserand, and copies of the paperback are still available in print at the moment. Next up we have some of my favourite books in my personal library. It's the LOAC Essentials by the Library of American Comics, and these were originally printed through IDW Publishing. They did about 14 volumes in total, but only one of the volumes is Krazy Kat. There's also 3 other volumes of another strip that Herriman did called Baron Bean, which was a short-lived 3-year-long strip, which the Library of American Comics released in 3 separate volumes. And these basically are black and white daily strips, and they just cover an entire year of a particular run of a strip. Next up we have the comparison books done by Fantagraphics. So these are also Sundays, but these start earlier, starting from the Sundays initial run in 1916, and each book contains 3 years worth of Sunday strips. These are beautifully designed hardcover copies, which are meant to be successors to the original paperback ones they did about 2 decades ago. You can see the first book I compared was one of the paperback copies. And here they are side by side with the Taschen XL sized edition. Almost similar in height and width. Now, I couldn't do a comparison video without demonstrating the comparison of the size of the Little Nemo in Slumberland XL sized book compared to this new Krazy Kat XL sized book. Both books are almost identical in dimensions, except for the Krazy Kat is a little bit thinner in width compared to the Little Nemo, but they both measure up the same height, and they look fantastic next to each other as they have similar designs on the spines. The new XL-sized Krazy Kat edition comes to a total of 632 pages. The previous Little Nemo volume came to a total of 704, so very similar page count. And now for our final comparison, the original extra large sized edition, which was first printed and published in 2019, and it's long out of print. You can see here it comes in this awesome looking box, mimicking the design of the front and the back of the book, but it also has this handy travel handle meant for transporting the book. Here's some more direct size comparisons. You can see it fits almost within the size of that center image without the border. And here are both editions side by side with each other. And here's the rear view of both editions. You can see they've changed the design on the new edition to include a quote from Rolling Stone. I'll also just make mention that just like the previous Little Nemo XL sized edition, this new Krazy Kat XL sized edition has a different paper stock used. The original XXL sized used a more matte-like paper, whereas this new edition basically just uses a very kind of glossy, thinner type of paper. And here are a few examples of direct comparisons between the same pages on both editions. Now, with all that said, here's just about a minute or so of footage just showing entirely what the interiors of this book look like. But that's basically it. It's a fantastic book. If you did pick up the first edition of the XXL size, I would highly recommend this slightly smaller and more manageable sized XL edition. And it goes for $100 US, so what's to complain about that? It's much more affordable compared to the previous edition and much more shelvable. My final recommendation is, if you're going to order this book or any other awesome comic strip book, is to hit up your local comic book shop or local independent bookstore and ask them to order the book in for you. My local comic book shop is Quality Comics here in Perth, Western Australia. I would highly recommend checking them out if you ever visit Perth or if you want to order a book in through them. And that was the gorgeous new book we've got from Taschen. A big thank you to the folks at Taschen that make these gorgeous oversized editions. It's definitely a labour of love. The home audience definitely appreciates it. So I really recommend you hit up your local comic shop, hit up your local bookstores, or online, see if you can find a copy of this and order it in. Some places may have it already. It may be soon due for release, but the complete Krazy Ignatz Sundays from 1935 to 1944 is a book you want to have in your collection. That being said, see you in the funny papers.